Next, we're going to have the discussion and consideration of agreement with Flintco LLC for construction management at risk services for the City Hall project for $75,000. These are for the pre-construction services.
Thank you, Mayor. Andy Conyers, Assistant City Manager of Administration. I appreciate the waiting till the purchase. I was trying to build up the suspense.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to talk in a very monotone, government-y voice, but please don't let that distract you from how exciting I believe this evening is for this project to continue to move forward. And so what I'm going to do is talk about the agreement with Flintco for the construction manager at risk agreement for the City Hall project. And to me, really, the whole basis of this is to form the three-way partnership to construct the project. So over the last 6 months, the two-way partnership has existed between the City of Edmond and the design team with Reese and Associates. And approving this tonight would allow Flintco to come on board, and I'll talk more about that detail. So to me, a project of this magnitude necessitates a strong collaborative team working together, and the earlier in the project, the better. So evidence of that partnership is here tonight in the form of Rachel Bundy and Farouk Kareem with Reese, and then as well with Kirk Mammerman with Flintco. So appreciate them being here this evening. So an outline of what I want to visit with you all tonight about is, so the item on your agenda and the only voting item on the agenda this evening is the approval of the agreement with Flintco for CMAR services. I'll get into that. But we thought it was a good opportunity, we're about 30% done with design, to give a project overview and update, as well as go into a few details about what the CMAR process is, of what the actual agenda item is, the path forward, as well as the project budget and funding. And then last but not least, I think probably the most fun part of the evening is some feedback from you all I'd like to get on some conceptual images that have been developed. So, and please, at any point during this, stop, ask questions. Happy to answer those and have a conversation. So just a little bit about this project. So some of the justification for this, really, the justification primarily is the growth of the city. As city manager had mentioned, 22 years ago when our city engineer started, the community was 68,000. Now we've grown to 95,000. So corresponding with that, we've had a growth in our employees. And also planned for this project as well is a new council chambers, which, as you can see behind me, on an evening when we have quite a few people here, it gets a little tight. And I know it's gotten tighter than this before, and we've had overflow seating. And so you kind of know that drill. Also, right next to here and tied to this building, it is our municipal court, which a new space is planned for that. And again, it's too small for a community of 95,000. Also, this project was identified, the City Hall project was identified as one of the projects in the 2017 repurposed CIP sales tax. And then, as you all talked about earlier on priorities for you, which come from conversations with the community on your strategic plan, both components of this project, both the City Hall and the economic development, which I'll touch on, are two of your top 5 priorities. So important to highlight that. And currently, the individuals in these are in 3 different buildings. And having been down here now for 8+ years, what that leads to is public confusion about what building am I supposed to go to for what. And then also, I believe that employee collaboration suffers. When you have employees scattered over 3 different buildings, the chances of having what I like to call collisions, whether in the break room to say, hey, have we ever thought about this? Have we ever thought about that? Suffers when you're not in the same space. And also, I think it's important to talk about the second component of this, which will be a future component of this, is the economic development after the office is consolidated. And I'll have a visual here in just a minute to help better illustrate that. So the location, where exactly is this going to be? So this is downtown. So currently right now, and what's proposed as a future redevelopment site is where we're at right here. Earlier, we visited with the Leadership Edmond class in the Downtown Community Center. So that site right there is going to be our future City Hall. And I'll get into more of the details of each of these things, but I thought it's helpful to have a visual of exactly where this is going to be. So the City Hall will be a 2-story structure currently where the Downtown Community Center is. As you move a little further to the east, so this is Littler right here. Plans are now is for that to become one big green space and to be closed to vehicular traffic. So think of a place for people to gather. And then as you move further to the east, currently where our Planning and Public Works building is, there will be a parking garage built there. That will be 5 stories. And again, I'll go into more details about each of these components as we move forward. And then as you move a little further to the east, the final component of this project is a new municipal court, again, because the space we have now is not large enough to fulfill the needs of the community. So this part will be along Boulevard over here to the east, and then our street here on the north-south. On the north side is Main, and on the south side here is First, and then over here is Broadway. So just to help orientate where we're at. So a little bit about the project overview and update. So the City Hall project is planned to be 2 stories and 59,000 square feet. And so for the past 6 months, we've spent lots of time with the higher design consultant, Reese, visiting with city staff as well as the oversight committee to figure out the programming and how many square feet needs to be in each of these spaces. So that's how we arrived at 59,000 square feet. So the departments that are being included on the first floor are the planning and zoning department, the engineering department, building and fire code services. And then on the second floor, will be office space for the mayor and city council, the city manager, the city attorney, risk management, city clerk, marketing, and urban forestry. As well in this building will be a city council chambers that's planned to be about 3 times the size of this space to, again, accommodate the needs of a growing community. And also the plan is for it to be flat floored and to have detached seats. So think having more functionality as a space. So this space is a bit hardened, and the only things that can really occur here are public meetings. So we're very intent on making sure that it's not just a space for public meetings, but it's also a space for other things as well. And then what will also be in this building will be public meeting space. So there is public meeting space currently available in the downtown community center. So when that is demolished, that will go away. So there's plans to accommodate for that. As well, in this building is planned for about 3,300 square feet of shell space, so for future growth. So that 59,000 in working with departments, the questions that we asked were, how many employees do you have today? Where do you see that going over the next 10 years? And then in addition to that, we also thought about, let's look a little farther in the future. And so we added 3,300 square feet of shell space. So roughly that would add 40 additional offices or workstations. So lots of flexibility built in there. So the other part of this, so really I like to think of this as 3 large structures. So you have your city hall, then you have your parking garage, which is planned to be 5 stories, 350 parking stalls, and it will meet the needs of not only the city hall and municipal court, the employees in them and the residents that come to interact, but also provide public parking. So it's large enough to help area-wide parking. And then also, as you'll see in the renderings, currently we're showing the potential for retail space on the first floor of that. So we really like the idea of, again, there's nothing definitive, but like having the option and more conversations as the project progresses. And the renderings will help show kind of how it breaks up the parking garage a little bit and adds a little more character to the space. And then directly to the east of that will be municipal court, which is the final building in this, which it'll be 1 story, expanded courtroom and lobby, and additional office space. Currently, the staff deals in very sensitive cases of a very sensitive nature, and the employees, just due to space, are right on top of each other. And so this will provide a little more privacy when they're dealing with those cases to interact with them. So the construction manager at risk process, and I realize that is a lot to put on a slide, so I'll just try to kind of briefly go through it just a little bit. So this is a new process for us. So the city traditionally has just done design, bid, build, and I'll talk more about that in the second bullet point, but kind of why we feel like this is the best project delivery method for this project. So there's 2 components in the construction manager at risk process. So there's pre-construction services and then there's construction services. So some of the things that we're agreeing with Flintco that they will provide in the pre-construction service, which is on the agenda tonight to approve for $75,000, is cost estimates, lead time analysis, value engineering, and then also finally, when we near the end of the design phase, for them to set a guaranteed maximum price. So that will be the price that the project will come in at. So working in conjunction with us, the city, the owner, and Reese, the design team, Flintco will work to set that guaranteed maximum price, and then we'll talk about what the project budget here is in a second. I think it's especially important, why we're choosing this delivery method, when you talk about lead time analysis. So you heard from Glenn Fisher, the Edmond Electric Director, earlier about issues with getting certain things related to electrical infrastructure. So all the more reason to have your general contractor on board during the design phase, because then they can identify those, and then we can order those to keep the project on task and on time. During the construction phase, the general contractor puts their GC hat on, and then they do the procurement of subcontractors, cost management, status reports, quality control, and project closeout. So everything related to the construction they manage that. A little bit about, traditionally design bid build has worked very well for us if, say for example, we're widening an intersection. So things that maybe don't have nearly as many components, and we're still committed to that process, but things that are so detailed as building buildings, we feel like it's really advantageous to have somebody that helps acquire all these subcontracts that come with that. And again, helps us especially identify where we could get stuck and not meet schedules during the pre-construction phase. So we feel like this is the best project delivery method for this. So moving down the list just a little bit, again, just a reminder, I had to put it in here like 3 or 4 times because our city attorney asked me a few times to make sure it wasn't in here, just 1 or 2 times. Whenever he speaks up and say, hey, do this, it'll help keep you out of trouble, I usually try to listen. So I've learned a few things. So yeah, there you go. So how Flintco was selected, we had a request for qualification process. We had 11 very qualified teams submit. We interviewed 4, and then the oversight committee selected Flintco. So again, this agenda item is just for pre-construction services of $75,000. It also is the CMAR fee, that is 3.95%. So of the guaranteed maximum price, which I'll get to the project budget in a second, then Flintco for performing these services will receive 3.95% of that. And then also what's in there is the conditions and the process for how this will work. So for this project, what we anticipate in future agenda items, this project will be built with 3 to 4 sub packages to construct the project. So each time what this will look like, for example, they'll all be competitively bid under Title 61, and then in conjunction with the architect's construction documents, the recommendation will be brought before City Council, and then funds will be encumbered. For example, what that looks like for this project, the first sub-package is going to be the demolition of the downtown community center and the planning and public works building. So Flintco will work hand in hand with us and with the architect to put together that package. They'll go out, solicit bids on that, and then they'll write a recommendation after those bids come in. We will come to the City Council and say, here is staff's recommendation along with the CMAR, and then we will encumber those funds for that. So that's exactly how the project, that'll work for all 3 to 4 of those sub-packages. As we get into it with Flintco and Reese, we'll talk about if there's 3, if there's going to be 4. But that's how the project will be constructed. So the only funds that are being encumbered tonight are the $75,000 for pre-construction services. And then the project budget. So now that design is 30% complete, we feel it's appropriate to set the number. So really wanted to make sure that we were properly defining exactly what this project is. So again, now we know it's 59,000 square feet for the City Hall. We estimate in working with Flintco and Reese that this will cost $23.6 million. So the total project budget to construct this project is $44 million. And this is a breakdown of each of those. So the court, you can see that 625, the parking garage, a little under 9 million, and then the FF&E to equip the spaces in the court and City Hall, and for the demo and abatement of the 2 buildings, and the landscaping, and for the project. And something I didn't talk about a little bit is we know that there's going to have to be some street improvements associated with this project too. So Main Street, so making better use of the lanes that are out there now to make sure people can access it the most efficiently. So that's, we estimate that currently to design and then also make those improvements at $500,000. So that's in the scope as well. Additionally, we know in a future phase, there's going to be a light required at Boulevard and Main. So the design of that will be in this, but we don't anticipate that being within this project budget. We're concerned about lead time issues, but again, that's why it's very helpful to have Flintco on board, to have your GC on board, so we can talk about those things. Talk about, do we want to do the light while all this is under construction? Can we actually get the light in here on time? Can we not? So we'll make those decisions as we go. So that is all the things underneath the project budget. Components that are outside that project budget that we're currently looking for additional sources for are the green space that I mentioned. So again, that community gathering space that's between the buildings. We anticipate the budget for that to be $1 million, and then the traffic light at Boulevard and Main will be another $1 million as well. So, and then source of funds. So city manager always makes sure that I add some slide about how we're actually going to pay for this, which I think is an important thing. So as we had messaged to you all during your strategic planning session on November 4th, to complete this project, as well as the second library and YMCA, we're gonna have to borrow funds. So currently what we're proposing is to borrow $80 million. That's over 15 years, and the interest rate that we're looking at right now is 4.5%, with repayment coming from the 2000 CIP sales tax. So staff recently met with our financial advisor and bond counsel and talked about mechanisms to accomplish this. Again, with the goal of $80 million, 44 for this, and then $30 million to construct the second library and YMCA. And just a reminder, we've already encumbered $3 million for the design of that project. We paid for that out of cash, and $4 million for the land. So the intention is to repay ourselves from the borrowed money, and then we'll free up some cash that we've already paid for the design. So that's where the $80 million comes from. And it's not just for this, but it's also to allow us to continue forward on their capital projects. So plan moving forward is for the bond counsel and the financial advisor to come to the January Finance Committee meeting, and then to obtain the funds in March, April. So that would all come before the city council. And then repayment of this plus existing obligations, which $40 million were borrowed in July of 2021. One of the big projects with that, which is nearing completion, is the Kickingbird Golf Course. I wanted to do a comparison of what this looked like. To borrow this money, what does it look like compared to our cash flow? So as a reminder, we have two primary sources of funds for this. So two dedicated sales tax, the 2000 CIP and the 2017 CIP. So currently the 2017 CIP is scheduled to sunset March 31st of 2027. So we looked at both of this. If it's extended, basically it ties up 26% of the cash flow. If it's not extended, then it ties up 35% of the cash flow over that 15 years that this $80 million is looking at being borrowed. And then also we're looking at repayment to those funds of the sale of the land that surrounds this, that once the city vacates, then we will sell, and then future TIF revenue by currently the city holding these properties that are going to be redeveloped. There's no property tax that comes in on that because the city's exempt from paying property tax. But once those are sold to private development, then there will be TIF revenue generated over the 20-year life of the TIF. So the fun part, so thanks for bearing with me a bit. We got some conceptual images. So big thanks to Reese in working with the oversight group over a number of months to come together on these. So we're interested in your feedback, just to kind of to know, are we on the right track with some of these, and kind of what do you think? So what you're going to see are 3 different versions and 5 pictures of each version. So there's lots of different components to each set. Really for us though, the project goals when we sat down with Reese many months ago to do this was buildings and spaces that the community and our employees can be proud of. And we feel like with these images, that we're creating those spaces. So.
Is this where we should say, ooh?
Yeah, I think so. You should definitely do that. So here's the first image. Again, there's 5 pictures of each version. So this is Main Street running along here, and so we're looking back to the south right here. Again, a 2-story building. And here's from the courthouse looking southwest. So here's Main Street right here, and then here's Boulevard right here. So again, 1 story. And here's what this looks like in the evening. So we wanted to have a night view of kind of what this might look like. And then here's the garage. So again, the garage will be 5 stories. And this Littler that will be closed to vehicular traffic is right here. We're still early on in the development of what might go in there. And so we didn't have images to show this evening, but we're working with the architect on that, and the landscape architect's been hired. So 5 stories. For us, what's a must on this is that it'll be screened on all sides. So we really want to make sure that it's not something that's just utilitarian and serving the use of parking cars, that there'll be screening on all sides as well. So there we go. And there's just an option what that might look like in the evening. Currently, here's where the retail space is shown right here. And again, we're talking about is that we believe that's a component we would like to keep, but we want to make sure that it's something that comes within the project budget. So for parking garages, I learn a lot in every project I do. So roughly it's $25,000 per space for a parking garage. So you start doing the math, that adds up to just under $9 million for 350 spaces. So, but any thoughts on images in the one, or Are we on the right track? I don't know if Mayor served on the Oversight Committee, as has Councilmember Chapman. Any thoughts or things you'd like to discuss at this point?
Brilliance.
Good leadership.
You've had a hand in
Good
this, so I hope you
leadership.
say that. Yes, sir?
Can we talk about functionality for a second?
Yeah, you bet.
Did I hear that you did some surveying of employees and the kind of hierarchy of needs? And can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we made sure that we did is, and I didn't have the floor plans for each of the floors, but what we really wanted to make sure that we did is, so Reese has spent many hours with different departments talking about who do you need adjacencies to? And so we talked, for example, planning, engineering, and building services does a lot of work together. So we wanted to make sure there was adjacency there. So once you're behind sort of the fob access or security doors, then there's
Which security was kind of high on the list.
security was
wasn't
high on the list. I can touch on that in a minute too. But we wanted to make sure that there's flow within the departments, and so it doesn't seem like you're siloed within your department. And we make it much easier. And meeting spaces aren't necessarily designated to departments; they're based upon the floor. So each area will have different collaborative spaces where they can meet. Currently now in our buildings too, and I didn't touch on this. I should have. I kind of skipped over it. We have made the most efficient use of our current office setup. I think it's pretty remarkable. We talked about winning a water quality award. We now have employees in former things that used to be closets, things that used to be copy rooms, things that were storage rooms, basements. And so I think quite a
Not
few
many
people-
windows.
Yes. So windows, natural light is definitely something that was a huge goal when we sat down with Reese of this. And you'll read study after study of what leads to employee happiness at work is natural light. So we wanted to make sure we could incorporate as much of that as we could within. But yes, definitely collaborative spaces. Currently now what we have, I wouldn't call them break rooms of anything. They're more little kitchenettes. So we wanted to make inviting spaces where employees would gather, and then ideas can be fostered from that. So, yeah, very intentional about that.
So where we've got public spaces and then thinking about security moving inside, which I know was high on the list, and then windows, a lot of windows, a lot of light has come into that and helped kind of form the form and function of the building.
Yeah, you bet. So basically there'll be layers of security. So there'll be security to get in the building, not only for the public, but also for employees. But then there'll be fob accessed. So the public will be able to be in certain spaces, the meeting room spaces, the council chambers after they go through the first layer. But then after that, to get somewhere else, then you're going to have security access. You're going to have staff come out and get you to lead you back into that space. We tried to design a lot of the meeting rooms also that are in outside of the department space too. So if an applicant for a planning project wants to come in and talk to our city planner, then they can do that and not have to go back into the city planner's private space in the offices. So again, just some really some of the biggest contrast in the images in sets 1, 2, and 3 are the finishes that we've been working with a little bit. So again, same views from this, lots of natural light, a nice big inviting breezeway, and then court. You can see the finishes are a little different in this, and then here's the night view of that. Lots of different options that we could play with color, just showing this as different things. And it's certainly not asking pick 1, 2, or 3 this evening, but these are just different ideas. And there'll be lots more public conversations. We really didn't want to talk too much because I think it's hard. I know for me, I'm a very visual person. Until we had these images, I think it's difficult to talk to the public. So we'll have lots more public conversations after this evening, assuming things continue to move forward. So, and then finally, the third, just showing just a little more variation on some of the same pictures. So. There we go. Any feedback on any of the images? Remember?
I'm impressed.
They're nice.
One of the things that on the committee, it's 3 different buildings, basically.
Yeah.
You have the city hall type building, you have the parking lot, then you have the
Courthouse.
municipal court. And wanted to show distinction between them instead of one long
Right.
box. How do we break it up so that there's you can really look at them and see that there's three distinct entities there. And to be welcoming for the community, for today's community and the community that when we're no longer here 50 years from now.
Yeah, I've heard one member of our oversight committee say that you only build a city hall every 100 years, so we better get it right. So, and I feel that the process that we've set up with the oversight that's being sat on by the mayor, Councilmember Chapman, city manager, city engineer, I don't think we chased him off by putting him on this committee, but I'm not sure, I haven't asked him that directly, and our city planner, working hand in hand with Reese, along with all the collaboration we've had with departments, sitting down and better understanding what their needs are today and what they think their needs are going to be moving forward. So really feel good about the process. Next steps. So as I mentioned, this will involve lots of planning, which is another reason why getting the construction manager at risk on board for pre-construction services is so important. They'll work with us to set schedules and to make sure we're hitting the targets that we want to be open in late 2024 is scheduled for the project completion. So one of the first things we need to do, and we've been doing lots of work behind the scenes, is making sure that all the departments that are in functions in the downtown community center find a new home. So we're very close to being able to announce that. And also the two departments that are in the planning and public works building, they have a temporary home. So what we like to say is we're looking for swing space for them, so places to go while this is all under construction.
Have you found that place yet?
But we're very close. Yeah. So between 7 North Broadway, which is where our human resources department, finance and utility customer services, you all took an action a few months ago to extend that lease with the owner of that property. So we will utilize 7 North Broadway for some of those functions. And then the recently purchased former Francis Tuttle building at I-35 in Covell, which we now call North Timbers, will serve as swing space for some of this. And then permanent space for some. So we are moving our employee health clinic that is currently in the downtown community center out to North Timbers. So it'll be a larger space for them. And a lot of our employees that do their work out of the field, they're based in that area of town. And it makes a lot of sense to us to give them greater access to that. For admin stiffs like me, it's a little easier to get to the clinic, so we want to make it a little closer for those folks. It's a little difficult to get there.
I did notice when you said late 2024, I looked back there and the Reese and Flintco representatives were going,
Were they? I don't have.
Good.
Did they? Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're all in agreement with that.
Actually, I think I said August of '24 is what my day was.
That sounds late
It's more like
24
mid
to me.
24.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you know about, can you talk about DMV and county office?
Yeah. So the DNV and county office, we found temporary space for them
Okay.
or swing space for them at 7 North Broadway.
Great.
Yeah. So
So are they coming into, City Hall building or parking garage?
We haven't had those conversations
Okay.
with them yet. But where they, and this, we don't have the best, so the retail space that I talked about
Right.
on the ground floor, that's unallocated space at this point.
Okay.
So we need to have the conversation with them.
Okay.
They serve a lot of customers in our community, but we're, as you all know, we're making a huge investment here, so we want to make sure that they're able to pay for some of that lease space as well. So we'll work with them. Yeah. Sorry, next steps. So we're nearing the end. Again, I said we're about 30% complete with design, so we're nearing the end of what's called schematic design. So we'll continue moving forward, and as we get a little closer, we'll have some more images to show. So some 3D modeling of the interior and exterior to give it a little more feel. Lots more public conversations. I know I will be going to the Urban Board in January to talk about this as well. So I'm happy to speak to any and everybody about this project and do a roadshow if asked. So
And speaking of that, for committee, the kind of the financing angle, that's going to be running through finance committee, right?
yes. So they will be the recommending body to you all on that. So in January, we will talk about that. So we'll have Chris Gander here with BOK Financial to walk through that, and Alan Brooks as well.
So Mayor, if I can add a couple of things. So thank you, Andy. Great job, and he's our day-to-day project manager on this. A couple things of note is he mentioned the $44 million. That is different than what our hope is for the GMP, Guarantee Maximum Price. Our goal is the cap for this project is $44 million. Now, the GMP may come in below that, but it will definitely not exceed that. And that's our effort with the oversight committee, working with our partners, is constantly value engineer, look at the process, determining, hey, this costs a little bit more than we anticipated. Do we need to offset it over here? The overall goal is, by approving this budget, a cap of 44, we're not coming back and say, it was 44, now it's 45, now it's 48. It is what it is. The second part is I think it's a big step forward for the city to move to the CMAR process. I know several of the cities in the metro have been doing it. I know our bigger partner, Oklahoma City, is exploring it. They currently don't do that. I know they have an interest in exploring how that is done. I think it's a novel approach for us to consider. I think it provides timing as well as value. And the other process is this oversight committee. It's grateful that the mayor and Councilmember Chapman is involved, but we have other projects. So the one coming up is the YMCA library project. So that would be an oversight committee that not just representatives from council, but a representative from both the YMCA and the library. And that body then helps to make decisions or recommendations that ultimately come back to either us or their respective bodies. So it's a very interactive process. Councilmember Moore, you mentioned a key thing. As we've done our employee survey, one of the things that came back really for the first time in our employee survey was safety for our employees. And so that's a key factor. We looked at different things. For example, at City Hall, when this is done, everybody will come through the same entrance. There won't be little side entrances. There'll be some form of security. You don't know what that is. Could that include some, metal detectors, whatever it may be? But it's a way that we can provide additional comfort to our employees, that when they leave to go to work, that them or their families feel comfortable that they're going to come back that evening. We have a dispersed campus today that creates interesting challenges for us for security. And it was a priority for me and for the oversight committee to make sure whatever we design is critical for that. And then it's recruitment. This building is a recruitment effort for future employees. If it's attractive and inviting as well as functional and healthier environment, we think it's an opportunity for us to continue to be that exceptional place to work. I think the last thing is we want to, I'll call it walk the walk of what we talk about. So if we are encouraging our development community, the downtown or elsewhere, to design to certain levels, we need to be willing to do it ourselves. So, somebody could say, well, that's a really fancy city hall or whatever it may be, is if we're not willing to produce a product where we say we're going to house ourselves, how can we tell our development community to do something we're not willing to do? So I think the last thing is we also want to take an opportunity can we be a demonstration for some of the technologies? We talk about the water conservation aspects. Is there alternative energies? We talked about geothermal, we talked about solar. We talked about that green space. Is it an opportunity for us to demonstrate low flow water plants or whatever it may be? So it's more than just a building. It's an example of how we envision or hope our citizens envision the future of Edmond.
And just
Andy, the other thing, it's, we've chosen to use data on these projects, these specific two projects. I also think it's important that the citizens understand that we had a consulting firm present to us, was it last meeting, our finances?
Yes.
And we have traditionally and are right now sort of an under-leveraged municipality when compared to other cities. So this will allow us to use leverage in a bit that will put us certainly closer to other municipalities to
yes,
hopefully for some economic development in our community too. So.
you bet. Yeah, I didn't, just real quick, I'll hit on a little bit because I just kind of skipped over a little bit. So the plan is once employees that were in 3 separate buildings are then housed in the city hall and municipal court, there's redevelopment, there's 4 redevelopment sites. So we'll go through a request for qualification to work with the private developer to repurpose and redevelop those to higher and better use. So the space where we're currently at right now, the space that we call Littler Lawn right here, which is where the former police station was, and then just directly south and west where our City First building is, will also be sold. So these will be sold one by one. So the city will say, we're trying to achieve XYZ, office, retail, some sort of mixed use. Please let us know what you think about that. Tell us if you have a proven track record of doing this, and then we'll vet those, and then we'll bring those in front of the city council in the form of development agreements. And the final parcel is what's surface parking right here to the north that's directly across from the downtown community center right now. So I forgot to hit on that a little bit. So again, it's really two phases to this. It's these three structures, and then it's the selling of the parcels afterwards for economic development and for higher and better uses. And we really feel like the green space, adding this green space, will only lead to better projects in this, as well as this, because it's not very far away. So I think it's quite an amenity, not only for the community, but also for a development community afterwards as well. So.
And Andy, remind, the parking garage isn't strictly for city use.
Correct, no. And we're building that large enough to not only house our employees, but for public use as well. So, yeah, you could see a potential of if something is built here and they need, rather than surface park it, our preference would be that we work out an agreement with them to lease space potentially in here in the garage. So we've got 20 spaces to lease you, and then so, yeah, more efficient use of land. So that was a lot. I'm getting the eye. So as a reminder, this evening, the only item on your agenda is right here, to approval of the CMAR contract with Flintco. So there you go. So lots more conversations with you all and the community to come on this very exciting project.
It's incredible we've come
Very
this far
exciting.
with this.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm ready for the guaranteed market price. Guaranteed.
That is one of the major advantages of using this project. And this CMAR, the construction manager fees are within this cost right here. So they're not in addition to, they're within that cost right there. So.
Great.
Good, a lot of discussion and a lot more to go.